What's up guys? Today I'm going to show you how to create a variable in Java. It's one of the most basic things you can do, and I'm sure most of you have done this before. But do you understand how it works under the hood? In programming, it's always important to understand how things work, so we're going to talk about how this works. Let's begin with what is a variable. Well, if we're doing very basic math, then we have variable x equal to 5 and variable y equal to 4. And we're asked, what is x plus y? Well, we assign the value of 5 to x, and we assign the value of 4 to y. So when we look at this, we know this is the same thing as asking, what is 5 plus 4? And I'll put 9 so you know that I know the answer to that. But it works the exact same way in Java. We create a variable, we assign a value to that variable. We can then use that variable in our program. When our program sees it, it understands that it's just a placeholder for some value. So it fetches the value that's associated with the name of that particular variable. Let's create one. In Java, the first thing you have to do is give the type of data that you're going to be storing. So we'll do a simple int here, an integer. Next, we give the name of our variable. It can be anything you want as long as there aren't spaces. So we'll just go with x, just like our math example. Now we could stop here. If we just stopped here and put a semicolon, this would be declaring a variable. But we're going to take it one step further, and we're going to initialize this, which means we give it a value. To do that, we give the equal sign, which is the assignment operator in Java, and then we give the value. So we'll just go with 9. So what is this line of code? What's happening here? When the compiler reads this, first it sees that we're storing an int. So what it does is it allocates a chunk of memory on the RAM big enough to store an integer value. Next, it looks at the name of our variable, and it simply associates this name with the address of the chunk of memory that we just allocated. So basically, the name of our variable is just the address for where the data is located. Here we are assigning the value of 9 to x. Now, another way we could explain this is we are storing the value of 9 in this chunk of memory that we allocated, which resides at this address, at the name of our variable. Alright, so if we want to see what data is contained in our variable, in this particular one, we can just do a system.out.println. We can pass in x. And what happens when the program gets here is it sees we have a variable, so it just fetches the data associated with this, which in this case is 9. So if we print this out, we get 9 printed. Now what happens if we try to store something other than an integer here? So if we try to store a string or something, you'll note that we get an error. Now first off, if you get errors, don't be discouraged, because I get them all the time and it hasn't stopped me. But if you're wondering how it knows you have an error here before you run the darn program, it knows because whenever you make a change to your code, it audits that change, and it checks to see if there are going to be any problems caused. Here it knows there will be, because we stated that we're going to be storing an int in this variable, but we've got this weird string here that says human words. So the system is telling us that no, you can't store a string. You can either change your data type to a string, or you can change the value of this back to an integer. So if we change this to a string, you'll notice that the error message goes away. And it's because now we're storing the proper value or the proper data in this variable that corresponds with the data type. So now if we print out x, we get the very popular saying human words printed out down here. And this is how it works for most variables, or for most data types. There are an infinite number of data types in Java. You can create your own classes, which means there are an infinite number of data types. But they all essentially work this way. You have a chunk of memory that's allocated, and then you have the name of a variable that's associated with that chunk of memory. And that is how your data is retrieved. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. If you'd like to see more on variables, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next time, so stay hard.